Hi there. Welcome to another series of Mastering the Guitar. My name is Rick Ragoza here, and I'm basically motivated to be of assistance to educate the beginner, the intermediate player, even the professional on some of the fundamental fine-tunings on how to play and things that will help save you time and focus in on acquiring the goals as opposed to just sitting there and hoping that it happens. So my main focus is a dexterity type of relationship that, and in theory, that as long as the fingers have freedom of movement and are getting familiar with the areas that they're playing in, okay, that just takes away the frustration of having to learn how to follow certain postures and certain positionings and being able to press certain strings down and certain frets and eliminating all the struggles of the dexterity that it takes with some of these chords. You know, they're 5-fret chords. Okay, so there takes a little bit on how to make sure that they relate in the minimum movement principles as they're moving from one chord to the next. And there literally is, after all this time that man has been able to play with string instruments, it comes back down to a science. There really is an approach that minimizes waste of effort and maximizes the time that we spend on this instrument. What I'd like to start with first is every once in a while, and as we get more advanced in these, it'll be more of a prereq, and plus you'll get more familiar. And that's first off starting with some kind of tuning reference or tone reference, okay? And we're basically around an A440, okay? Which puts us at where, you know, concert C, which is basically what this guitar is tuned at, okay? Now the names of the strings aren't so as important as the pitch that they're at, okay? So as you're listening, you know, and hopefully you have your VCRs on so that you can record this and then play it back. If you're listening, you want to have your top string sound something like that, okay? It doesn't hurt to hum the sound. All right, get it in your head. Okay? It's very important to hear that. All right, because the top string's an E. Okay? Now the next string's an A. Okay, next string's a D. Now some advice on how to tune the machine heads and work with tuning the guitar is that when you strike the string, say for example, and it's much too high, okay, then instead of, or as the logic dictates, we're going to have to loosen the string, okay? But certain things people forget is that there's wounds on the string, okay? And the little wounds get caught up on the nut, on the bridge here, around the posts. And when it comes time to play, your string can be a certain pitch, and you stretch it out a little bit, and it's a little lower, okay? So it's important that the process that you go through in tuning is to turn the string down lower, okay, to find the reference, ma, 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 you know, get that sound that you're going for. And slowly snug up the tension of the string. This way it relieves the slack, okay? If you're not sure, it doesn't hurt without torquing on it. You don't want to wreck strings, but you can grab with the right hand each of the strings and then pull up on them, relieving the slack, okay? Same thing with where the strings attach to the machine heads. You can just give them a little tug along that, and that just takes up the slack and makes sure that the string's open as possible, okay? That changed a bit. Okay? Now, something just for fun before we get into the focus of this lesson is what they call harmonics. When you strike a string, what you're really doing is setting it to oscillate, okay? But there's semi-cycles of oscillation, okay? The string is vibrating as a whole, and then there's also semi-cycles as it's vibrating around itself, okay? How we can hear this and relate to this on an audible level, is by placing, for example, this is the first time with harmonics, okay? For those of you who know what you're doing, then you don't need to hear this. But for those of you that this is the first time that you've experienced with harmonics and a part of the overtone series, what you're doing here is you're stopping the string, and the easiest way, first off, to do this is over the 12th fret, okay? So count out your 12th fret, usually the one with the double dots or some marking that's 12, okay? You touch the string. You're literally just touching the string over the last fret, and it produces a hum. It's called a harmonic, okay? All right, it's possible to do this on every string. Okay? Now, we can't do this as well on some frets as others because there is a requirement of measurement, okay, in the overtone series. You could go down, for those of you who are zealous and are interested and hungry and for knowledge, go down to your local library and get a supplement on the physics of music. There's a book called Musicology, and it explains in this realm how our, the smallest sound wave that we're familiar with is about a ½ inch, and the widest sound range is around 25, sound wave is around 25 feet as far as the bass within that spectrum. And we just hear a small area of that ourselves as far as our range of hearing, okay? But the overtone series, understanding that now, this string is producing equal amount of oscillations, 440 cycles, broken in two here, to produce a hum. But now when we find a different fret to stop at, all right, that raising in pitch is the sound of the shorter area of the string being predominantly sounded, okay? We've got the full length, partial length, all right, and the smallest. Now that can be done on each of the strings. And in episodes that follow, I'll teach you how to tune your guitar using harmonics, okay? And it's just another safeguard. You should really go through a process of 2 or 3 different ideas and techniques. Octaves, your major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Playing 1 and 8 at the same time. Whether the strings are tuned within themselves and if it needs intonation adjustment. Intonation adjustment is the bridge on the back of the guitar has little saddles that go forward and back, and that adjusts the length of the string. So we can adjust and put your instrument in perfect pitch, or as close as it can be, as far as what they call just an intonation setup, where the strings are as tuned as they can be. Okay? So now that we looked at tuning, a drill that I'd like to look at is, again, we looked at this a few episodes ago. It's called the chromatic scale, okay? Now the chromatic scale quickly was playing out the 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? Shifting back a fret, down a string, and then shifting back up into position, then playing 4, then your shift. Third and second string, you stay the same, and on the first string, you drop down. And on the way back descending, it is your 4th finger. But you notice that while I'm doing this on the descending, when I'm shifting the 4th finger out, you have to have at least 1 finger on as a guide, okay? Always leave at least your index finger on that keeps you in position, so at all times I know where I'm at. I can stretch out, position, and come right back in. Okay? Now there's another way of playing the extended chromatic scale, and that involves just the 1, 2, 3, 4s, okay? Playing 3 sets of 1, 2, 3, 4 in each string. Okay? Open string, 12th string, 12th fret area. The octave, it's the same. So by playing the first string, and then our 4, then 4 more, then 4 more, I can play half-step progressions, okay, chromatic, up to an E again, okay? Okay, so I encourage you to practice tension and release cycles, tension, release. Shift in 5th position. Shift to 9th position. And go back. Okay. Okay. Treating these basic exercises, actually this is an actual scale, but treating it as a drill. Okay? The idea again is developing the relationship with your instrument. So you're casual, you're comfortable, whatever might come your way. You're familiar with the area, the fretboard, your fingers are getting used to this, okay? And as you develop this vocabulary, you'll find that the sounds just happen by themselves. Okay? Now there's another way of playing this extended chromatic scale, and I'm just going to quickly open it up at this time. At the starting of the first position, we play our 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we do a 5th position shift. Now, this drill does the type of dropping and shifting that we used in the other chromatic scale, but we drop and shift, and then that becomes our guide finger. We play 1, 2, 3, 4 from there. Drop and shift. Okay, try it again from the 5th position. And the important thing about my fingers, and that's touche to those of you out there who play and are up there enough that you can play even at the same speed along with me. Okay, that's great and everything. The important thing of what you should be looking for, though, is not only how your fingers apply the tips and the pressure, tension, release cycles, okay, but also that when you're, okay, we're shifting down, all right, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. The important thing is just like in walking that you step before you move, we play the 4, plant, and then move our finger. Plant, and then. Okay? Don't take your hand off, then find a new position, then find... Okay, you're going to get lost. And also what we're doing is we're walking through this. Same thing, forward and back. Before you move into a different position, plant that finger that's going to that position before you move, okay? And the extended chromatic scale will be written on the sheets that are available, so not to worry, they're on paper, and they're there for you to enjoy, okay? Now, let's get to the focus of this lesson. Up until now, we've been looking at the first 5 keys, okay, C, G, D, A, and E, all right? And we've looked at the 1, 4, 5 chords or harmony, okay? The harmonic application of those keys. And understanding that basic cadence, the 1, 4, 5, is a common chord arrangement or chord progression that's used in literally like zillions of tunes, okay? It's a common cadence, one of the about 8 or 9 that we've been using in the last 50 or 60 years. There's a few different ones, but then our music, what we're listening to, we're not really in this Western culture accustomed to a whole lot of stuff, so it's pretty much limited. And on the radios, if you listen to the radio, it's really limited. So we've been learning the 1, 4, 5. The importance of that is understanding how we can get chords from keys and even how a chord is made. Now, on the other side, or adding components to what we're building on here, is there's, as an example of a song, there's a melodic approach or melodic features in every music example, okay? From every breath you take to, well, there's a number of examples I can think of that basically have certain type of even cliche melody lines over chords that immediately give you the example or immediately let you know what song it is. You can just tune right in going, yeah, well, that's the riff for that song. There are some songs that aren't so cliche, or what they call in the music business hooks. They don't have as many hooks, but they're still based on the same principle of taking melody notes from the chords, okay? Or taking notes from the triads and from the scales and producing the phrasing that we're listening to, okay? And we're going to look into that this time right now. Now, we're going to recap and associate, okay? So we started off with the key of C. The 1-4-5 in the key of C is C, F, and G, all right? Now, the procedure and how I'm trying to encourage positive habit-forming techniques here is that you want to start off with, first off, isolating the key. The next step is find the root note for that key and then be able to play the major scale in that key, because you're going to need to know the notes in the key that you're in to be able to figure out what your triads are, what your melody lines, all the above, okay? So as far as this goes, the C is on the 8th fret of the top string, okay, or 7th position. And we're going to be playing the major scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, okay? Starting with turning to C. Now each one of those is also a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, okay? How this works is a major triad is 1, 3, 5. Minor triad's 1 flat 3. Okay. Dominant 7th is 1, 3, 5 flat 7. Okay. Augmented is 1, 3 sharp 5. And diminished is 1 flat 3 flat 5. 8. And those are the 5 basic formulas that are the underlying formulas for all the sounds that you're listening to on the radio and all the chords that you've ever heard, okay? Now, how we can use the major scale and how the major scale in any scale is used, okay, is establishing the key, understanding where our root note is. That's number 1. Now, from number 1, we can apply basic numerical patterns, okay? Shapes, phrases, all these terms have been applied. Starting with recognizing, for example, the major triad. Okay, I've taken the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 8th note of the major scale, and by isolating those notes and then playing them in amongst themselves, that's a major impression or a major sound, okay? Now, what we're going to be learning here at this time is the boogie pattern. It's what I call the boogie pattern. What it is an arrangement of, or a formula taken from the major scale, of a pattern that we play alongside the chord based to a mother pattern or a schematic or a chord drill, okay? And that it will also be included with the papers that are available, that you'll be able to see that certain sections you play a C or the 1, and then you count that out, and then you'll play a 4 chord, okay, back to a 1 chord. And learning that music for the players dictates a discipline that at certain points of time, anyone who's playing has to be in certain places, otherwise they're out of key, okay, or otherwise they're out of the rhythmic phrase that you're in. People don't understand and appreciate the amount of discipline involved in playing a 5-minute song or a 4-minute song, and being able to reproduce certain phrases at certain times, literally exactly each time, in order to make that song, that favorite tune that you're playing, or that emotional rush that you're getting from that solo. The amount of discipline involved with placing those notes in strategic points to create those emotional phrases, okay? And so this is an important thing about this stage of learning, is that there isn't anything done by accident. It's all deliberate choice, and it's all counted out, okay? And at this point, we're equipping ourselves with the discipline and the ability to be able to play a basic, simple melody line behind a chord structure, okay? I call it the boogie pattern. What the boogie pattern is the formula for it. If you don't have the sheets just yet, and this is new to you and you're taking this down, write this formula down. It's 1, 3, 5, 6 flat 7, okay? 1, 3, 5, 6 flat 7. And I call that the boogie pattern, Okay, now how that is applied and how that works for us is this way. First off, we need to know where our root note is for the key of C. We're in the key of C. We got our C right here. Now, in using the major scale, we need to know where our 1, 4, 5 is. Well, let's just use the major scale. Here's our 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is just underneath the 1. And 5 is 2 frets higher than 4. So we've got a 1, 4, 5 shape. And we would refer to that as a shape, 1, 4, 5 shape, okay? Well, this 1, 4, 5 shape now becomes our tonal centers for any melody that we'll be playing in the key of C. So, in starting with the root note, we're in C, okay? Now, I'm going to be playing notes from the major scale, that formula 1, 3, 5, 6, flat 7, which is commonly referred to as the boogie pattern, okay? 1, 3, 5, 6, and flat means that you take your 7th note and lower it a half step. 1, 3, 5, 6, flat 7, okay? 1, 3, 5, 6, flat 7, all right? Now I'm going to play those forward and back. And thus we have the boogie pattern, okay? Now to equip ourselves with the freedom of movement and the places where we've been playing, let's look at the boogie pattern playing in the 4th step of the key of C, or an F, okay? Which is right underneath the root note, C. Here's our F, 4, okay? 1, 4, C, F. And we play it from the 4, which is starting on an F note, okay? And then we play the same mathematical pattern using the same major scale, okay? Which is 1, 3, 5, 6, flat 7. We're going to play it forward and back. And that's the boogie pattern for F, okay? Now the boogie pattern for G is 2 frets higher. We have C, F, and G, that shape, 1, 4, 5. Well, we play the boogie pattern starting on a 5, okay? Now we find our G, and we play the same shape, 1, 3, 5, 6, flat 7. Okay, so we have the boogie pattern for C, the boogie pattern for F, and the boogie pattern for G. Okay, now if we were playing in a band, or you were practicing, or even if some of you out here have a tape player or any of that kind of stuff, you can record the rhythm section. Okay, and there's a little kind of a tag ending on that, all right? Now, that was basically an outline of what the rhythm section will be doing. This is what the melody section will be doing, or the lead section, okay? You repeat C again, then down to F, back to C, up to G, down to F, back to C, and then the ending pattern. Okay? Now, there's a lot of information there, and the key of the information is how to dissect the major scale to get the types of melody notes or the phrases. Everything that has been ever made can be numerically related to, or broken down, or explained, transferred. And what I found out in the early years of getting into teaching and actually being an educator is, first off, I have to know it myself. And once I learned it myself, how to communicate that to somebody. How can I tell you where to put your fingers in the least amount of effort without actually sitting there holding your fingers and, man, and I've done that, I've been there. So knowing how to use the numbers has been such a liberating key factor in communicating music. And for those of you who've been taking lessons and have been helped through this process of thinking, you know, you know yourselves that by understanding how the numbers, it takes all the confusion and in communicating the data back and forth. You play 1, 4, 5 in the key of C, okay? And I've mentioned this before. If we were to take basic sheet music and show Japanese people and show Chinese people and show East Indian people, they would all look at this and they would all read the same notes. That whatever instrument they were playing, they would be playing the same thing because this language is the same. Okay, 1-4-5 is the same to the Chinese as it is to the, you know, the Pakistani people, ourselves, as far as these honky Caucasians. It's the same to everybody. Okay, and that's why it's important that once you get your 1-4-5 down, it takes the whole mystery out of what's going on. Because if we need to change keys, C is not good, then we can change key and go to the key of G, 1-4-5, okay? And it's that simple of associating. Well, then we go G, A, B, C, D. Figure out what the 1-4-5 is in the key of G, okay? So in the next following episodes, we're going to be looking at boogie patterns, the complementary boogie patterns for each of the 5 keys that we've been introduced to, okay? So it's an important prereq for you out there who are taking some of this information seriously and really are trying to learn how to play guitar through all this, is to know what is your 1-4-5 in the first 5 keys, okay? And again, none of this is under any kind of pressure or any kind of force. Take your time. If you have any questions or any kind of inquiries at all or availabilities of the programs or any of that kind of stuff, just send your information to box 369, Community 10, called Mastering the Guitar, so we know which box to put it in, okay? And from there, we'll respond and make this as an enjoyable experience as possible. There's no pressure here as far as yourself. I've went through all that, and it doesn't work to place unnecessary frustration on yourself. It's important to go naturally, just slow at your own pace, and think about what you're doing at all times. It's very important to know the key that you're in. Why am I playing C right now? When's F coming up? Okay? These kind of things are what should really occupy your mind, because that's what's happening here. And my job as a guide, teacher, instructor, whatever that is, however you want to title that, is to just give you key data and pathways to follow to make your experience as easy as possible and as efficient as possible, that you would be wasting the least amount of time. Okay? So for now, today we looked at the boogie patterns, the 1-4-5 in the key of C. The boogie pattern, one more time, is a 1-3-5-6 flat 7 pattern. So even you come home from school, from work, whatever your trip is, find a key, whatever it is, A, G, whatever your root note is, and say, what was the boogie pattern again? 1-3-5-6 flat 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we know where our 7's up here, so we want to make it flat. That's a half step lower. 1, 3, 5, 6, flat 7, okay? And you can, by messing with this, with the chords and experimenting with the scales, you can begin to start seeing what I'm talking about, how the numbers relate to the sounds. And there's a direct connection. A flat third has the same impression and sounds the same no matter which octave you're playing it, and a flat third gives that minor kind of sound, okay? And you'll see how the numbers relate. So have fun. Get closer to your major scale as you can, because the better you know that, the easier this whole trip is, being able to figure out the notes of the chords and why the shapes are the way they are, and be able to figure out the basic little melody patterns and the little types of phrases that go over that. And the thing is, with this, you can create. Once you know the tools, you can create some of your own, okay? So I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope you continue with what you're doing. Keep looking ahead, because it's important that you just focus on the future, okay? And your body's going to adapt to this pattern, so don't be frustrated. Just keep it up, and you'll see the changes. In a few months from now, you'll just remember how you feel now, because you won't remember how it was not to play a chord. Okay? We'll see you next time on Mastering the Guitar.